Other from the visitors?
Good evening, First Selectman. This is my opinion. The motion made and voted on in favor of and passed by 3 members of this Board of Select Persons, with members Carol Walter and Jack Sheridan voting no, at the Board of Select meeting on November 28th regarding this board's appointing new members to other boards and commissions, as per the stipulations contained in the charter changes taking effect in November of 2019, and are to be applied by this board effective immediately going forward. This should be rescinded, as that decision falls outside the terms and scope of the existing current charter and falls outside your authority to make that decision at this time. Since the charter changes voted on and approved by the voters does not take effect until November of 2019 with regard to elected and appointed positions. Your constituents understood that was what they voted for, and you should not deviate from what the current charter language says, because it was approved and is enforceable currently in all respects. A number of us have contacted other towns and leaders in the Secretary of State's office, and we agree with this assessment. At this point, they are only opinions, but it is strongly suggested that this decision you made on November 28th be rescinded tonight. One more item. For the remaining period of time that the Board of Finance is an active, viable part of our current governance, as you move forward into the next budget fiscal year decision-making process, it is hoped that your board will now immediately appoint new members to the Board of Finance when those open positions need to be filled for either party, and with individuals who have been vetted and recommended by their party. Thank you.
Anybody else? Visitors like to speak? Yes.
So, Gary Bousquet, as you probably know, the RTC unanimously endorsed me to be seated on the Board of Finance. I would have to say that I agree with Mr. Farmer about the policy that you, as a selectman, have started to institute. I think I understand the theory behind it is that we don't want all of a sudden at day one of the new charter to hit the ground running. However, it seems like there was no transparency to the public or to other politicians that this is how we were going to transition. Never once did I hear anybody talk about starting to implement the charter before the charter actually had to be changed. And that's kind of what you're doing. And I think it's being done with good intent in some places, but I think you're also cherry picking in other places. I think this is probably going to be it will be one of the most important years for the Board of Finance. I'm probably the senior RTC Republican in town. I've been in politics since I was in my 20s. I know how the Board of Finance works, and I'm ready for the job. I think if we really, and I don't want this to be political, which I feel it is, but if you really felt this way, Mr. Sengels would not sit on 2 boards. Mr. Guerrera, as we saw in the paper, he did decide that, for whatever personal reason, that he shouldn't be on the 2 boards. These 2 boards are not in conflict with each other. The one that Mr. Sengels, the 2 that Mr. Sengels sits on, they are in direct conflict. So it's hard to believe, from an outsider's point of view, that it's not political when one of the people in the group is doing exactly what you're trying to prevent me from doing.
Anybody else from the public like to speak?
10 people.
Okay.
Excuse me, can I just,
Yes.
I'd like to say I think the decision that you made and the policy that you put in place is one that you have every right to put in place. And I think there is another endorsed Republican who ran in the last municipal election who actually got more votes for the Board of Finance than the person the RTC put forward. So you are required by the town charter to put a Republican on, replace a Republican. It doesn't say anything in it about either of the town committees. Well, that's been the practice in the past. I think if they can't come forward with someone, and it's not a question of conflict, it's a question of someone who's going to be on two boards. I think what you did was a wise move, a prudent move, and I think there are good Republicans in town who have experience on the Board of Finances. Tom Hollinger certainly has. That you could have, you could still select, and I would urge you to consider that. Thank you very much.
Anybody else, visitors like to speak? All right, moving on to approval of minutes, November 28th.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
I do have a discussion. At the time of Mr. Sengels' motion, I would like to have his motion directly read into the minutes, because I believe that he was quoting, he had it printed out on a sheet of paper, and I believe he was quoting from the new charter. And if that is the case, that he was quoting from the new charter for his motion, then that creates a legal conflict that we have here. I went back and looked, and the word policy was used versus the word charter, but I believe that Mr. Sengels took his quote as to how to deal with appointees holding two elected positions. I believe he took it directly from the language of the new charter, and I think that creates a legal situation. So I'd just like to have that commentary added to the minutes, or added to the, I don't know how you would, whether that's an amendment or commentary or what, towards the minutes of last week.
So are you making a motion?
I'm discussing the fact that I don't think the minutes reflected the origination of the language that Mr. Sengels used for his motion.
I'll allow for further discussion. Is that what you do?
Well, yeah, I don't think, Carol, you're in a position to know where the words that I spoke came from, but I will say, I did refer to the new charter just to make sure I had the facts right, but I wasn't reading it verbatim. My recollection. I referred to
You
it
held up a
because...
piece of paper and you read it all.
Okay, I referred to it. Now, I hold this up, I'm referring to this now. And so, I want to make sure that it matched the new charter, because that's what we were trying to do, that's all. That's all.
Matched the new charter, therein lies the issue. Okay.
Consistent with the new charter. Consistent
We're
with the new
consistent
policy.
with the new charter, then we should be consistent all across the board, if you know what I mean.
No, I don't know what you mean.
I mean,
I
you
would
should
like-
not be holding two elected
I would like you to
positions.
Okay,
explain.
can we not have banter back and forth?
Well, since Carol brought it up, I was elected to the police commission in 2015.
3 years ago.
That's right, 3
Okay,
years
I'm
ago.
going to stop the conversation.
Yeah,
here.
it's something to do with
Do we
minutes.
have a motion? Is this a motion?
I would like to have the actual language that Mr. Sengels used to make his motion added to the minutes of last week's meeting. There's a summary of his motion, but I would like the actual language that he used to make that motion put in the minutes.
Well, our current secretary was
Mary's not here tonight.
I know, I'm aware of that.
So I guess, do I have a second to that motion?
Well, I'll second that motion. Yeah.
Discussion, further discussion. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Stand.
Okay. I'm going to, because Mary is not here and I prefer her to be able to bring the previous minutes, I'm going to vote no for now, and we will revisit next week when Mary is able to bring back the minutes from last week. Okay. All right.
Wait a minute, if the motion is made, and there are two affirmative
You need-
votes,
you need three.
and two, oh, right.
So we can revisit this next week. So I'm going to ask for a motion on the minutes. We had a second. So we had discussion. Do we have further discussion on the remainder of the minutes from last week? Okay. All in favor of, why don't we, can I have
What, table?
yeah, can I have a friendly amendment to table the minutes?
Oh,
Who did the who made the first?
Phil.
Bill, you first.
yeah, so I agree with Dave, when I withdraw the motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
First on the agenda is-
I'd like to make a motion to add an item to the appointments column. At the request of the Republican Town Committee, I would like to nominate Gary Bousquet to fill the seat that was recently vacated by Doug Trainer. His name was submitted by the RTC for this position last week, and it didn't, I see that Omar's name was nominated at the same time, and I see that Omar's name is here, but Gary's name doesn't appear. I understand that before the appointments conversation took place last week, we had the discussion about integrating a portion of the new charter into the current policies of the town. But Gary's name had been nominated for this seat prior to that, so I think we have an obligation to bring up his nomination and discuss it. And also, I just want to say that Tom Hollinger was brought into the conversation, was asked whether he would have any interest in being on the Board of Finance, and he said absolutely not. He's done. He does not have any interest in it again. So I would like to nominate Gary Bousquet to fill Doug Trainer's vacant full seat on the Board of Finance for a term that would end necessarily by the elimination of the Board of Finance in November of 2019.
So I've consistently not amended regulations and appointments because there's always the opportunity the next week to appoint people.
Well, that was last week, and I said last week that I'd bring it up this week, so I am bringing it up this week.
But he no longer fits the qualifications based on the vote that was taken by the Board of Selectmen as a whole. So
Well,
at this point,
I honestly believe that that's a charter violation. I mean, that really was sprung on us at the meeting last week, and if I had known that topic was going to come up and that was going to be discussed at that point, I would have done a lot more searching before that topic was brought up. Did you discuss that with the town attorney at all? Because I know you consult him regularly on policy and stuff. Did you run that policy past the town attorney for his opinion?
At this point, the candidate you're putting forward.
Wait, I'm getting back to whether we're operating under the current charter or the future charter.
Right now,
what are we doing here?
Right now, we're operating in that. I have consistently upheld a policy that we do not add to the resignations and appointments at a meeting.
No, that's not true. We have added appointments to the agenda as we've gone through in the last year. Yes, we have.
Items, but not resignations and appointments.
Yeah, we have. Yes, we have. We have had people step in and been appointed during the course of the meeting.
There has never been an emergency resignation and appointment.
Well, you know what? Honestly, that's not the issue here, is it? I mean, because Gary's name did come up by the RTC a week ago for this appointment.
Again.
So because it's not here, doesn't make it right.
We can make it next week.
No, because last week I said I'll make it next week. So it should have been on here this week.
Again, I will not accept resignation appointment changes to this agenda unless we have.
Well, I made a
motion.
I made a motion, so.
So you need a supermajority to change the agenda at this point. Is there a second?
Okay, well, that being what it is, I would like, Wendy, for you to note that I believe that the denial of Gary Bousquet, or the RTC nomination for appointment to the Board of Finance is in direct conflict with the charter that we operate under as of this moment. I don't think this is legal for us to institute a policy that goes against the charter that we work with. And I want to go on the record as saying that that is wrong, and the fact that the alternate party is disapproving of the candidate that owns that seat, holds that seat, that the opposition party is not allowing that candidate to be seated, goes against everything that's ever occurred on the Board of Selectmen before.
Okay, to move on.
Regarding Mr. Hollinger, it's funny that Selectman Walter said he's absolutely not interested, because I spoke to him rather recently.
Can I stop you though? I honestly, I'm trying to keep, I mean, it is political, we are political. I feel as though we keep bringing the dirty laundry to the Board of Selectmen. I'm really trying hard. I mean, there's certainly been issues in the Democratic Town Committee, and I'm trying to avoid it. I think it's a discussion that needs to take place with the RTC. That's all, I just wanted to.
I just want to say one thing. It was brought up, not by me, but I spoke to Mr. Hollinger, and he told me absolutely he was interested. So maybe he's changed his mind.
Okay,
My
let's,
report came from the chair.
this is not the time to
I
have
don't think
conversation.
there's.
I got it.
All right, we're done.
I don't think
Done.
it's
Done. Thank you.
I got it.
Do you have anything else to report, Bill?
Unless you could do the work.
The other thing I would say, we'll deal with the minutes next week, but minutes don't include opinion. We're just
All right.
stating.
Let's
Well,
step into the minutes.
It's the way they're supposed to work. Okay.
This video provided as a public service by Kirk Carr, the Kirkster. Thank you for watching.